So I just came back from seeing the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot movie. And here's my thoughts on this. And there will be spoilers in this topic. Overall, I felt that this is a movie that would have been better if it had been its own thing instead of trying to make references to the original movie. Or it could have been better as a movie that passes the torch and is in canon to the original two Ghostbuster movies and keeps the continuity of the franchise moving forward. This movie was being its own thing while simultaneously trying to reference the original movie with jokes that didn't really work and don't make sense and really should have been cut. If this movie was going to be great instead of good, it either should have been a proper Ghostbusters 3 with the returning cast as the characters that they played in the original movie, or it should have just completely ignored the original Ghostbusters movies and been its own thing with no influence whatsoever. And here's what I'm talking about. What we have in this movie is a girl who's supposed to be like the Peter Venkman of the film. She wrote a book with her friend on her experiences with the paranormal, and when she confronts her friend, who is the female Ray Stantz of the movie, her friend and the female Egon decide to follow up on this haunted house investigation opportunity that was brought up earlier in the movie, and the female Peter Venkman tags along with them because she wants to finish getting this book pulled offline and stop the sales of this embarrassing book. When they actually encounter a for real ghost and have real proof that ghosts exist, she becomes excited. The video hits the internet and the boss sees it and fires her from the college. This is a good setup, and we go to the characters are going to move to a second college and work out of that. But then they get fired from the second college. While getting fired from the second college, we have a sequence that goes on too long, wasn't needed, and wasn't funny. This part could have been cut or shortened from the movie, and it would have helped speed things up and get us back where we're going. After the movie gets past the unfunny scene, it picks up and gets interesting again, as there's another ghost attack in a subway, and we see a ghost design similar to the Stellari brothers from Ghostbusters 2, and this works as an interesting reference. One of the few references that works. The ghost-busting girls, we follow their story as they try to rent out the iconic Ghostbusters firehouse. The firehouse turns out to be too expensive for them to rent, and they're forced to rent an apartment above a Chinese restaurant. This is the first of many cameos that is included in the movie for fans of the original movie, which fails to impress. Although this little cameo of a location does sort of go someplace eventually. With the girls established in their headquarters, they hire on a receptionist who, to many people, and I can see why, becomes the most popular character of the movie. And he is an interesting character, but kind of a Patrick Star if you're comparing this to SpongeBob or something like that. Or he eventually sort of evolves over time, and while he's still kind of dumb and kind of flaky, he does become an interesting character. This is also simultaneously where they get involved with the female Winston Zeddemore of the movie, and she and the female Egon are probably the two most interesting and best written characters and get many of the best lines. The Ghostbusters go to the subway to investigate this ghost, and they bring along some of their new equipment. A massively huge cannon-sized proton beam that is completely not portable and highly impractical, but still does the job of wrangling the ghost. But with no way to trap the ghost, they end up having to just hold it in the stream. Eventually a train comes along and knocks the ghost out of the stream, and the ghost gets carried away by the train, never to be seen again. After this realization that their equipment works and they have something going on, the Egon character, over the course of the movie, evolves the equipment to the point where now we have proton packs and we have technology that fits on the back and is portable. We've shown something that we didn't get to see in the original movie. After catching their first ghost, we get a cameo from Bill Murray as he plays a sort of Walter Peck character. In Bill Murray's version of Walter Peck, he comes in, does the skeptical thing, puts some friction between the characters, and then he gets picked up by a ghost and dropped out of a window to his death, which I thought was the disappointing moment. It would have been much more interesting to have had him picked up by the ghost, carried out the window, and then had an ambiguous ending where he just sort of goes missing and we don't know what happens to him and we never find out what happens. Instead they just sort of kill him off, and this wouldn't be a problem except it literally goes no place. As the movie continues on, this death of a minor character is never brought up again. It has no influence on the story, no impact on the characters, nothing whatsoever to do with the future plot. We don't even see a Bill Murray ghost. It's literally never brought up and has no effect on the rest of the movie. After this sequence, we have some more mystery to investigate, and the Ghostbusters go after the big villain of the story, who is kind of like Janos from Ghostbusters 2. Just a regular human who's trying to open up gateways to let ghosts come into our world. Just like Janos wanted to gain power by inviting Vigo to step out of the painting, so too does this guy want all sorts of ghosts to step out of paintings, step out of mirrors, step out of portals, and he thinks he's going to gain some kind of power this way. We get this big thing where it turns out that the main villain killed himself so that he could become a ghost and gain power as a ghost. He goes around possessing people until he eventually possesses the person that allows him to escape and continue his plan and reopen his portals, and all of the ghosts come through. At this point we get our next cameo with Dan Aykroyd playing a cab driver, and he says some I ain't afraid of no ghosts, and it's the end of the cameo. We also had, when they were tracking down the villain of the story, Annie Potts, who plays Janine, stepping back into the receptionist role, and because she was still playing that Janine style character, it really works. We might even pretend that that really was Janine, but obviously it's not. But it really was stepping right back into the same character. That cameo worked a lot better. Perhaps the least impressive cameo of everything that we've seen happens during this major ghost invasion where ghosts are literally all over the city. And that's when a Macy's Day Parade balloon gets possessed, and it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It sort of drifts over and then it gets popped. And it really was probably the lamest way to re-include Stay Puft into this movie and force him to do his cameo. The cameo we did after Stay Puft is a lot better and a lot more important to the series and its Slimer. He comes out, he's eating, they attack him, and he escapes into the Ecto-1 and he drives it off. He comes back later, joyriding around, and eventually becomes a key plot point to help them end the movie. That's a much better use of a character cameo in my opinion. As the movie moves on, we have a confrontation with the villain of our story, and now he's like, boy, I've been taking all these different forms. What form do you think I should take? Which is really an annoyingly lame variant on Dozer's choose the form of the Destructor. Movie goes on, we come to the crossing the streams segment. In this movie, they don't really cross the streams, they find another way to nuke the portal to reverse its flow and cause all the ghosts to go back through the portal. But instead of setting up something that could risk your lives way ahead of time, you sort of throw it into the movie at the last minute, and it doesn't feel as dramatic or as life-risking as it could have if it had been set up way earlier in the story. After everyone's victorious, we get our cameo from the guy who played Winston Zeddemore, and it actually works. It was actually a pretty smart inclusion and use of the character, and he had some funny lines to say, and he actually feels like someone that could come back into the story. Then we have several after credits sequences, including the girls finally getting the Ghostbusters firehouse as their HQ, and finally setting up the containment unit as one of their technologies at their disposal. And they even have a cameo from Sigourney Weaver that also works, but sadly was at the end of the movie. Then at the end of the credits, after all of these dance sequences and outtakes and photos and things that you may not care to sit through, there is one more sequence in the movie that I thought was pretty interesting. If you ignore the existence of everything Ghostbusters that came out before this, you have a decently told story that's interesting and moves things along at an interesting pace, and shows characters evolving and sets up what could be the beginning of a decent franchise of movies telling interesting stories. What held this movie down was any time that it referenced the original movie. Except for the Slimer cameo and the Ernie Hudson cameo and the Annie Potts cameo, every other time that they referenced the original Ghostbusters movie, it was super lame. So overall, good movie, but not great movie. Anyhow, that's all the thoughts I have to say about this. Thank you for watching, and good night.